The first thing you learn about the outer colonies is this: nothing living is ever truly free. I didn't believe that when I left Earth. Back then, standing beneath the silver towers of New Jakarta's orbital elevator, I believed the galaxy was expanding opportunity. Trade routes, research contracts, diplomatic missions. Humanity was still new among the stars, still naive enough to think we were explorers instead of participants in something older and far more complicated. By the time I reached Virex 9, I understood the difference. Virex 9 was not listed on any official Terran diplomatic registry. It didn't exist in trade briefings or corporate prospectuses. You didn't arrive there by accident. You were invited, or you were sold coordinates by someone who didn't ask questions. The planet circled a dim blue star on the fringe of mapped space. From orbit, it looked like a bruise. Dark oceans streaked with violet storm systems, continents fractured into jagged archipelagos. The only permanent settlement sat inside a massive impact crater, shielded beneath a translucent atmospheric dome that glowed faintly turquoise against the darkness. That dome contained the largest unregulated exchange hub in 3 sectors. They called it the Exchange of Thyraxis. They didn't advertise what was exchanged. My employer did not tell me either. I was told only this: observe, report, do not intervene. My name is Adrian Vale. I represent the Terran Free Commerce Directorate, unofficially. Humanity had not yet decided whether it wanted to condemn or quietly benefit from frontier trade systems like Thyraxis. My presence was reconnaissance disguised as commercial curiosity, and I was arrogant enough to believe I could walk through hell without getting burned. Arrival. The shuttle descended through ionized clouds and docked at a spire connected to the central dome. The docking corridor was warm, humid, and smelled faintly metallic, like ozone and copper. 2 sentry constructs scanned me before I reached the inner gate. They were tall, jointed machines with layered plating resembling chitin rather than steel. Their scanning beams passed over my body in overlapping grids of blue light. Species, human. One of them clicked in a synthesized voice. There was a slight pause, long enough to remind me that we were still rare this far out. Permitted entry. The gate irised open. Sound hit me first. Thousands of voices layered in tones my ears struggled to process. Trills, harmonic vibrations, subsonic pulses that vibrated in my sternum. Light followed, neon strands suspended in midair, holographic glyphs in scripts I did not recognize, plasma lanterns shifting through bioluminescent hues. The exchange sprawled beneath the dome like a city built from hunger. Multi-tiered platforms spiraled downward toward a central pit. Walkways bridged across open air. Floating barges carried goods in anti-grav fields. Every level swarmed with species I had only seen in restricted xenobiology files. Tall, translucent beings that refracted light like walking prisms. Stocky, furred traders with multiple eyes set in triangular arrangements. Thin, elongated creatures whose limbs bent in too many directions. And humans. Not many, but enough that I felt less alone. Trade booths displayed technology, mineral samples, biological compounds sealed in stasis cylinders. And then I saw the lower tiers. The ones the upper levels pretended not to notice. Rows of containment fields. Living beings inside them. Some sat quietly. Some stood rigid. Some trembled. I felt my throat tighten. Slavery had been outlawed on Earth for centuries. Officially, humanity rejected it across every charter we had signed among the stars. Unofficially, we had not yet confronted what the frontier tolerated. I activated the recording implant behind my ear. Personal log, I murmured softly. The exchange of Thyraxis includes sentient trade. The words felt inadequate. The auction ring. I didn't descend immediately. Instead, I observed. The lower platforms operated like any livestock exchange, if livestock could look back at you with intelligence. Buyers examined biometric readouts projected above each containment field.
Age.
Physical resilience. Cognitive adaptability. Labor classification. Some listings included compatibility with specific atmospheres or neural interface technologies. One enclosure held a trio of amphibious beings submerged in a vertical water column. Another contained a massive quadruped species fitted with neural restraints. And then there was a section separated by shimmering violet barriers. The crowd density was higher there. Curiosity overrode caution. I moved closer. A sign in trade tongue flickered overhead. Premium genetic assets. My stomach turned. Inside the violet barriers stood beings unlike any I had seen. They were tall and slender, their skin a muted silver blue that seemed almost liquid under the light. Fine luminescent lines traced delicate geometric patterns along their arms and necks. Their eyes were large, not exaggeratedly so, but deep, layered, reflective like polished opal. They were unmistakably intelligent and unmistakably afraid. A trader stood before the enclosure, a broad, armored figure with segmented plating and four-jointed arms. His voice carried through an amplification field. Rare acquisition from the Calith drift. Highly adaptive. Elevated neural capacity. Exceptional bioharmonic compatibility. Ideal for cognitive labor, experimental interface, or domestic integration. Domestic integration. The phrase made bile rise in my throat. A potential buyer approached, tall, insectoid, wearing layered metallic fabrics. It extended a limb toward the barrier. The nearest captive flinched. I stepped forward without realizing it. One of the silver-blue beings looked up. Her gaze locked onto mine. Everything else receded. There is a moment, I don't know how to describe it scientifically, when two intelligences recognize each other across a gulf of culture and biology. It feels like gravity. She moved closer to the barrier. Up close, I saw faint abrasions along her wrists where restraint bands had been removed. The luminescent lines along her skin pulsed erratically, not decorative. Biological. She studied my face. Humans are expressive. We cannot hide emotion well from species trained to read micromovements. Her eyes widened slightly. She stepped closer. The barrier hummed. And then very softly, so softly I almost believed I imagined it, she spoke. In accented but clear trade tongue. Can you buy us, human? The words hit harder than any weapon.
Not me. Us.
Behind her, 3 others stood. 2 younger, 1 older. Their patterns glowed in subdued synchronization with hers. A family. My pulse pounded in my ears. She knew what I was.
How?
Humans were uncommon here, but not unknown. Still, she had chosen me. Why? I asked before I could stop myself. The trader's attention flicked toward us. She leaned closer to the barrier. Because humans break systems. The faintest tremor touched her voice. You do not belong to theirs. A heavy hand clamped onto my shoulder. I turned. The trader loomed over me. Interested in acquisition? He asked, mandibles flexing in what might have been amusement. I'm observing, I replied evenly. Observation has a cost. His gaze flicked between me and the captive woman. She is premium classification. Entire cluster is bonded. Purchase requires full unit. How much? The question slipped out before logic intervened. The trader's eyes gleamed. He projected a figure into the air between us. Even through diplomatic funding channels, it was astronomical. High adaptability species, he said. Their kind integrates well. Rare in this sector. Harvested from unstable territory. Limited supply. Harvested. My fists clenched. Behind the barrier, the woman watched me with something fragile and dangerous in her eyes.
Hope. The choice.
I stepped back. I had not come to Thyraxis to dismantle it. I had come to observe. If I purchased them, I would validate the system, become a participant. The Directorate had been clear. Gather evidence. Do not interfere in ways that could entangle Earth diplomatically. But if I walked away, I looked at the younger two behind her. Their luminescent patterns pulsed faintly, almost in distress synchronization. Children. Or the equivalent. What happens if no one buys them? I asked quietly. The trader's voice was indifferent. They will be redistributed. Possibly separated. Demand varies.
Separated.
The woman's fingers pressed lightly against the barrier. Human, she whispered again.
Not pleading loudly.
Not wailing. Just a quiet statement of possibility. You break systems. I felt something fracture inside me. Earth liked to think we were moral because we had outlawed certain things in our own territories. But morality means nothing if it stops at your border. How long until the next auction cycle? I asked. 2 rotations. Roughly 16 hours. I swallowed. I'll return. The trader's eyes narrowed. Deposits secure priority. I transferred a fraction, enough to stall redistribution. The barrier shimmered as confirmation registered. The woman exhaled slowly. I met her gaze one last time. I need information, I said softly. If I'm going to break a system, I need to know how it works. For the first time, the faintest flicker of something like determination replaced fear in her expression. Then come back before the lights dim, she said. They monitor less during cycle shift. I turned and walked away before I could reconsider. Beneath the dome, back in the upper tiers, the lights seemed harsher. The exchange was not chaos. It was structured. Security nodes hovered at regular intervals. Data streams pulsed through overhead conduits. Financial transactions updated in real time across species-specific networks. This was not a pirate outpost.
It was an ecosystem.
To free 4 captives, I would have to understand the organism. I retreated to a quieter observation deck overlooking the central pit and activated a secure channel to my ship AI. Elias, I said under my breath, I need structural schematics of Thyraxis dome infrastructure. Power grid, security routing, transaction authority layers. That was not the mission parameter, the AI replied calmly. I know. A pause. Are you intervening, Adrian? I watched the lower tiers where violet barriers shimmered. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. I will assist. The whisper. 6 hours later, cycle shift approached. Lighting across the dome dimmed subtly. Not dark, but lower frequency. Crowd density shifted as certain traders closed booths and others prepared for late-cycle auctions. I descended again. The trader noticed me immediately. Human returns. I need to inspect the asset, I said evenly. Verify integrity before finalizing. He hesitated. But deposits speak loudly in places like Thyraxis. He activated a partial field drop, enough for proximity, not escape. I stepped close. Up close without the distortion of the barrier, she seemed almost luminous in the low light. I am called Lyrie, she said quietly. Adrian. Her gaze flicked briefly to the trader, then back to me. You cannot simply purchase us, she said under her breath. Ownership will transfer, but registry remains. I suspected. They will track us. If removed from dome without clearance, containment protocols activate. Explosives? I asked. She shook her head. Neural failsafe. My jaw tightened. Can it be disabled? Not by us. Her eyes searched mine. But by you perhaps. You're assuming a lot about human capability. A faint flicker of something, almost humor, touched her expression. You are here. Behind her, the older figure stepped forward slightly. His patterns pulsed in slow, steady rhythm, calmer than the others. He is my sire, Lyrie said softly. The smaller two are my siblings. I looked at them. This wasn't random. This was a family caught in a supply chain. Why were you taken? I asked. Her jaw tightened. Our world refused integration. Integration. A sanitized word for compliance. We resisted. They harvested leadership clusters first.
Of course they did.
I exhaled slowly. I can't promise success. You do not need to promise, she said. Then why choose me? Her gaze held mine. Because when you looked at us, you were angry. The traitor shifted impatiently. Time. Lyrie leaned closer, voice barely audible. There is a control nexus beneath the central pit. It routes ownership registry and neural failsafes. During cycle transition, oversight reduces by 30%. How do you know that? I listened.
Of course she did.
You are not the only one who observes, human. The field hummed, signaling reactivation. I stepped back. I'll come for you, I said quietly. It wasn't a declaration of ownership. It was a declaration of war. As I walked away from the enclosure, one truth settled into my bones. I had come to Virex 9 to study a system. Instead, a woman behind a violet barrier had handed me a choice. And I had already made it. There are systems built for profit. There are systems built for power. And then there are systems built to make exploitation feel orderly. Thyraxis was all three. From the observation deck, the central pit of the exchange looked almost ceremonial, a wide circular depression where auctions escalated into spectacle. Tiered balconies overlooked it from every angle. Suspended holodisplays streamed live bids across interlinked trade networks. But beneath that polished theater of commerce lay something else. Lyrie had called it the control nexus. If she was right, that nexus didn't just track ownership. It enforced it, mapping the beast. Back aboard my docked vessel, the Astromeridian, I sealed myself inside the cockpit and activated Elias' expanded projection interface. The AI's holographic lattice filled the cabin with layered schematics. Thyraxis dome infrastructure appeared in rotating three-dimensional detail. It is not a simple marketplace, Elias said calmly. Energy routing suggests multi-tiered authority. Define. Power distribution is segmented. Public lighting, climate regulation, vendor systems, separate grid. Security and transaction registry, isolated network. A glowing thread illuminated beneath the central pit. And that, I asked. Encrypted conduit. Direct quantum relay link. To where? Unknown. Signal routes beyond Virex 9's immediate orbit. My pulse slowed. So Thyraxis wasn't independent. It was connected. Someone bigger was behind it. Can you access registry protocols? I asked. Limited. Core system requires biometric authorization from high-tier administrator or external override from parent authority. And the neural failsafes? Integrated into ownership registry. If registry identifies unauthorized extraction, localized neural overload is triggered remotely. I leaned back in the pilot's chair. So even if I purchased Lyrie and her family, their nervous systems would remain leashed to a remote trigger. You're certain it's remote?
Yes.
Transmission latency suggests off-site control. Likely redundancy architecture. A smart system. Disable one node, another activates. Which meant brute force sabotage would kill the captives. I closed my eyes briefly. Lyrie had said, "You break systems." But breaking this one required precision. The culture of compliance. Before dismantling something, You need to understand why it functions. So I went back into the exchange, not to the lower tiers yet, but to the upper levels where merchants drank, negotiated, and boasted. There was a lounge overlooking the inner dome wall, a semi-private enclave frequented by mid-tier traders. Atmospheric, mixed slightly richer in oxygen. Lighting dimmer. Translation fields calibrated for comfort. I ordered a synthetic mineral brew and listened. The key to frontier hubs like Thyraxis wasn't secrecy. It was normalization. Calith Drift produced superior cognitive stock, one trader said. Short-lived resistance, another replied. Resource density too low to sustain. Integration increases efficiency. Integration. There it was again. I turned slightly, pretending to study my drink while adjusting my auditory implant. A third voice, smoother, cultured, joined the conversation. Thyraxis merely facilitates alignment. Voluntary participation prevents conflict. Voluntary. I nearly laughed. Some resist, the first trader said. Resistance is expensive, the smooth voice replied. Markets correct inefficiency. I turned just enough to see him.
Tall.
Humanoid frame. Skin pale, with faint metallic sheen. Eyes black and depthless. Clothing minimalist but precise, not ostentatious like many traders. Authority without spectacle. Elias whispered in my inner channel. Biometric scan suggests administrative access clearance. So that was one of them. Not a dockside slaver. A system architect. He sensed my gaze. Our eyes met. He smiled slightly. Predator recognizing another predator. Or perhaps simply curiosity. He raised his glass toward me in subtle acknowledgement. I did not return the gesture. Lyri's people. Before confronting the Nexus, I needed more than schematics. I needed context. Cycle dimming approached again. I descended to the violet barriers. Lyri was waiting. Her luminescent patterns were steadier tonight. You returned, she said. I said I would. The trader on duty this time was different, leaner, less attentive. Mid-cycle fatigue. I need to understand your species, I said quietly. Fully. She glanced briefly at her sire before responding. We are called the Arendai. The name felt soft, fluid. Our biology is harmonic. Neural structures resonate across close kin clusters. Emotional states synchronize. Like empathic linkage? More precise. Harmonic exchange. It strengthens learning, stability, decision-making, which made separating families not just cruel, but neurologically destabilizing. Why target you? I asked. Because we refused resource extraction quotas. Your planet has something valuable. Yes. She hesitated. Not mineral. My mind shifted. Biological? Our world produces an energy phenomenon. Natural quantum harmonics embedded in planetary crust. It enhances neural interface technology. My stomach tightened. Your people interface well with advanced systems. She held my gaze. Very well. So they weren't being sold for labor. They were being sold for integration into high-level technological frameworks, living processors. And if their harmonic biology amplified systems, your kind could enhance centralized control architectures, I said slowly. Yes. That smooth-voiced administrator upstairs suddenly made more sense. The Arendai weren't merchandise. They were infrastructure. The central pit. I waited until crowd density peaked during a competitive mineral auction. Distraction was leverage. Using Elias remote access, I created a minor anomaly in environmental regulation on Tier 3. Nothing dangerous, just enough to trigger maintenance alerts. Security drones diverted. I moved toward the central pit. At its lowest level, beneath the auction ring, a restricted access corridor curved inward. 2 armored sentries guarded it. I approached confidently. Administrative review, I said, projecting the limited clearance credentials I'd purchased through a discreet intermediary.
They scanned. Pause.
Access granted. Money opens doors. Inside, the temperature dropped. The corridor walls were darker, less decorative, more industrial. Conduits lined the ceiling. I felt faint vibration underfoot. Power transfer at high capacity. At the end of the corridor stood a circular chamber. The control nexus. It wasn't a single console. It was a suspended sphere of shifting light, layers of data threads rotating around a solid core. Holographic glyphs streamed in constant flow. Ownership registry. Failsafe control. Transaction authority. And that encrypted relay line. Elias' voice echoed in my neural implant. I have partial access. Physical proximity increases decryption efficiency. I'm in proximity. Attempting handshake. The sphere flickered. Security prompts flared. Administrator clearance required. A synthetic voice intoned. I stepped closer. Override request. Terran Trade Observation Authority. I said. It was a gamble. Technically, humanity had observer status in 3 adjacent sectors.
Technically.
The sphere pulsed. Observer status acknowledged. Limited audit mode activated. I exhaled slowly. Audit mode. Not control, but visibility. Data streams expanded. Ownership chains. Neural implant signatures. Lyra's identifier surfaced among thousands. Arendai cluster. Harmonic Unit 7C. Status. Pending premium auction finalization. Failsafe link. Active. Remote authority node. Ascendant consortium. My blood ran cold. Elias. Trace Ascendant Consortium. Cross-referencing. A brief pause. Corporate governance entity. Multi-sector holdings. Infrastructure, energy optimization, population management systems. Population management. They own Thyraxis, I said. Correct. So the exchange wasn't rogue. It was corporate. Legal in its own jurisdiction. Efficient. Scalable. And if the consortium integrated Arendai neural harmonics into its systems, they could centralize control across multiple colonies. Lyra hadn't just asked me to buy her. She had asked me to interrupt expansion. A flicker rippled through the Nexus. Alert. Unauthorized query depth. Withdrawal recommended, Elias warned. I stepped back just as the chamber doors hissed open. 2 security constructs entered. Their scanning arrays locked onto me. Audit time exceeded, one announced. I raised my hand slightly. Observation only. They escorted me out. Not arrested. Not yet. But flagged. The administrator. I didn't make it far into the upper tiers before he intercepted me. The smooth-voiced administrator from the lounge. Up close, his presence was even more unsettling. Calm, measured, precise. You have curiosity beyond commerce, he said. Curiosity is profitable, I replied. Sometimes. He studied me. Humans are interesting. You claim moral evolution, yet engage in frontier economics when convenient. And you claim voluntary integration while installing neural failsafes. His smile didn't falter. Security is necessary in complex systems. Is it voluntary if refusal results in harvesting? He tilted his head slightly. Strong language. Accurate language. A brief silence. You accessed audit mode, he said calmly. Observer status is not immunity. I didn't break anything. Not yet. His gaze sharpened. The Arendai are strategically valuable. Interference would be unwise. There it was. A warning. Why them? I asked. Because harmony scales. He stepped closer. Imagine governance without rebellion. Infrastructure that anticipates dissent before it manifests. Stability across sectors. You mean control. I mean efficiency. He looked toward the lower tiers briefly. Your species prides itself on freedom. Freedom produces chaos. Chaos produces suffering. We optimize against suffering. By enslaving families. He didn't react. By integrating capacity where it is underutilized. My fists clenched. You believe you are the hero of this equation, he said softly. That you will rescue a few and disrupt the whole. But systems adapt. Not all systems, I said. He smiled faintly. We shall see. He turned and walked away. The decision. Back aboard the Astromeridian, I stared at Lyrie's registry file. Arendai Harmonic Unit 7C. Neural Failsafe active. Ownership pending. If I purchased them outright, I could legally extract them from the dome, but the failsafe would remain. If I attempted to disable the Nexus locally, redundancy would trigger. If I attacked the dome physically, remote authority would execute failsafes instantly. So brute force was suicide, which left one option. Corruption from within. Elias, I said slowly, what happens if ownership registry changes at parent node? Failsafe authority transfers to new registered owner. Meaning if I can insert myself into Ascendant Consortium's authority chain, you would inherit failsafe control. Exactly. Silence. That requires deep network intrusion beyond Thyraxis, Elias said. Can you do it? With time.
And risk.
How much risk? High probability of detection. If detected, Consortium may classify Earth as hostile actor. I stared at the projection of Lyrie's biometric profile. Her steady gaze. Her quiet voice. You break systems. I'm not acting as Earth, I said. I'm acting as me. That distinction may not matter. It matters to me. A pause. Then Elias responded. Preparing infiltration protocol. The return. I descended once more before cycle shift ended. Lyrie looked at me with searching intensity. You learned, she said. Yes. Is it possible? Difficult. Her patterns pulsed faintly. But I'm not buying you. For the first time, fear flared across her face. Then we are lost. No, I said quietly. I'm stealing you. Behind her, her siblings' luminescent lines brightened. The barrier hummed softly between us. You understand, she said slowly, that this will not only affect us. I know. You will make enemies beyond this dome. I already have. A long silence passed between us, not empty, but charged. Then she nodded once. In our culture, she said softly, when one risks harmony for another, it is called joining resonance. I almost smiled. In mine, I replied, it's called doing the right thing. Her eyes held mine. Then let us resonate human. Above us, the exchange lights shifted toward full brightness as the next auction cycle prepared to begin. Below the dome, data threads tightened. Far beyond Virex 9, the Ascendant Consortium continued expanding its invisible architecture of control. And somewhere in its network, a human AI began probing for weaknesses. The system did not yet realize it was being studied, but it would.
Soon.